Welcome to Blended TV. My name's David Rayfuse, and this is episode 3, and I have one of the most interesting men that I've had the privilege to work with, Daryl Council, joining me tonight. And we're going to have, I think one thing that we all want to know a little bit about Daryl is his past. And you know, he's been coaching here at Blended Athletics for almost two and a half years-ish now, and has more or less kind of developed what we know as the loft. And so you've probably had him upstairs if you ventured up there to partake in any of the classes. And one thing that makes Daryl very unique as a coach is that his style of coaching is more about body awareness and mind control. And I think we all want to know a little bit of like, where did those unique, talents, knowledge come? And what most of us, I think, don't know about you is, I mean, we can go way back, but let's start in 2004. You joined the U.S. Marines because you are a U.S. citizen. That's where you were born and raised. So let's start there. 2004, you're leaving high school. Why did you join the U.S. Marines?
So my decision to join the Marines, I guess, piggybacked off a couple different things. The first one was, it was just after 9/11. I think that was in 2001. And if anybody remembers, like when 9/11 happened, like the worst tragedy, I think, in American history in a long time, everybody was really caught up in the whole like patriotism mindset. You know, America's under attack from some strange villain in another country, and I felt like sitting back in the sidelines, like I wanted to do something because I felt like everything was in danger. But at this time, however, I was a very, very small, like weak, fragile kid. Didn't have a lot of friends, was very much a loner. Just lived a very different life. Like I really enjoyed the company of myself. And so I remember one day being in a gym class, teacher didn't show up, so nobody got dressed for class. And everybody's sitting around the bleachers having a conversation. They're talking about what they wanted to do after high school. And I'm sitting on the outskirts because I was not a part of this clique. And this guy, his name is Ryan, I won't say his last name. He turns around, looks at me, he's a big jock. He says, "Daryl, what do you want to do when you grow up?" And I said, I think I want to join the Marines. And I remember he said to me, he just looked at me and he says, "You could never be a Marine. Like the Marines would eat you up or chew you up and spit you out," is what he said to me. And I remember when he said that, like everybody laughed, and I just felt this like deep crushing sense of just kind of worthlessness, you know? And it was at that point where I said, you know what, I'm gonna prove you wrong. Like I'm gonna join the Marines and I'm gonna get through it. I'm gonna do the best that I can, if for no other reason than to show you that you were wrong about me. And so that's what got me into it.
And you spent how many years in the Marines?
I spent 8.
And tell us a little bit about that journey. So you've, gone through a lot during that time. Now we've talked before this. All the knowledge that you've accumulated over the years, it didn't come from being a U.S. Marine. A lot of it came after being a U.S. Marine. But the experiences that you had as a Marine certainly sculpted your desire to open up kind of like your vision to what you could be and what ultimately you wanted to be. So what happened through that experience that made you want to kind of change your life and become a coach and move to Canada?
It's a big question.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so a little bit of background first. So I went to boot camp 2004 in that summer. Grueling process. Like if anybody's ever watched anything about Marine Corps boot camp, it's one of the hardest boot camps, I think, on the planet. Basically, they take the average person, the average kid off the street who may be 18, 19 years old, just kids fresh out of high school, and they break you down. They chisel away every aspect of your individuality and turn you into something else. You lose all sense of identity and you just become part of this like kind of hive mind where you no longer really think for yourself, but you more or less just kind of obey instantly whatever you're told to do. And so in that sense, like boot camp was really, really hard for me because I hate being told what to do. And so to have to submit myself and just do whatever somebody tells me to do, regardless of how idiotic I thought it was extremely hard for me. I remember being about 1 month in and being like, man, I got 4 more years of this. And already like at that point being like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, but knowing that I couldn't do anything about it.
Was there a time during boot camp where you didn't think you were going to make it through that initial stage?
I would say almost every day. Almost every day it was a challenge. I mean, you wake up, you're getting yelled at from the time that you wake up until the time that you go to bed. Your drill instructors are playing games with you, like take everything out of your locker, put it on your rack. Oh, you didn't do it fast enough, put it away again, put it back on, take off all your clothes, put them back on again, stand on line, butt naked, like push-ups, burpees, just endless amounts of exercise as punishment for one person messing up. So it was just a giant head game from day one that just literally, it just makes you submit to the whole process.
I think it's interesting because we know you as a very different person than what I guess we'd kind of assume a U.S. Marine would be like. Right. And so that change as you kind of move through the Marines, what kind of forced you to think about moving away from it? I mean, oftentimes when we get kind of identified, being identified as a Marine, it's hard to step outside of that perception of the public and the people that know you that way. So is that what brought you to Canada?
No. So the first part of my enlistment, actually the first 3 years I was at Camp David, I was guarding President Bush up there. Really prestigious job, like got to see, dignitaries and the president himself many, many different times. But it wasn't like one of those things where, G-Dub would bust up in the barracks and be like, hey, let's hang out. Like I saw him kind of in passing, got a couple pictures taken with him, but he really didn't care about us as individuals. So it really wasn't as prestigious as people make it think. It's just an incredibly boring job. I was ready to get out of the Marine Corps in 2008, but I was in a relationship with a woman, went with her to Arizona. That relationship ended up not working out, and I was gonna move up there originally, or out there. So when that whole thing kind of fell apart, I said, well, I've got nothing else to do. And at the time, they had a big recruitment drive trying to keep, people of higher rank in. And so they offered me $90,000 cash to stay in the Marine Corps for another 4 years. And as a 22-year-old, like if somebody offers you that amount of money, like I don't care who you are, you'd probably take it. And I didn't want to stay in, but I did. And so I opted to go to a Special Forces unit, went there, went through the selection process, got injured in the first week, had blisters on my feet that were so bad they actually wrapped up to the tops of my feet. Like who gets blisters on the top of their feet? Toenails fell off, everything, I couldn't walk. I got dropped on day 6, got back, and basically just got messed with like me and the other people that ended up kind of flunking out of the course. Just endless mind games with that. Couldn't take it anymore, requested orders out to a different unit. And that's when I went to the infantry unit. And so I guess that 4 years I was put in charge of a squad of like misfits. Like they gave me the worst guys in the unit, 2nd platoon, 2nd squad, all 12 guys, they were mine. And they were basically like criminals that were turned into grunts, like just to carry guns and blow stuff up and shoot things. And I managed to turn them around completely, like so much of the fact where I actually got a Navy Marine Corps Achievement Medal for how drastic I guess that change for them was. And so that was one of those first things that I realized that I can be a leader, but I don't necessarily have to follow the same path that the other leaders before me did. And so that was the one thing that I always stuck by is I said, you know what, I'm not a yeller, like I'm not a screamer. I didn't agree with it when my seniors played games with me and yelled at me and made me do really ridiculous, stupid stuff. And so I approached each individual as an individual and I talked to them like men. I didn't treat them like kids. And so in that respect, I gained their respect, not from like the fear of like reprisal and stuff like that, but just because they're like, hey, Sergeant Council is a good leader. He leads by example. I want to be like that. And so they just emulated me.
I actually think that a lot of those qualities are also what make you a really good coach, because you have a coaching style that follows a lot of that same methodology. And it's very unique in the industry where you have a gift to be able to tailor each and every workout for each and every individual that is in a group environment, so in a class with you. So kudos. I mean, that's quite an accomplishment to be able to go through. So going from that point, what happened from there? So before you left, I mean, we're kind of closing in that point in time when you did end up leaving the Marines for good.
I have to back up a little bit more. So in 2009, we were sent on a deployment all around the world as part of the Marine Expeditionary Unit. Went to different countries like Croatia, Greece, Italy, Spain, Kuwait, Jordan, just all over the place doing like different training exercises, different port calls where we get off the boat and just drink ourselves stupid for days on end, and just sailed around the sea. It was immediately after we got back from that the earthquake in Haiti hit and just demolished them. So we're back for a month. They sent us back out again. We did some peacekeeping operations in Haiti. And that was one of the first times that I found myself in another country where the people, they had nothing. Like everything was demolished. They were living in tents. And my unit was set up to be security for some of the other like Navy people that were helping to rebuild and give out food. And it was just there that I started realizing that a lot of things weren't right. There was a gang that had come in and they were taking the meal kits that were supposed to be given out to the people, and they were literally hoarding them and taking all the food for themselves. And I remember a local came up to me and said, this is going on, like, can you help us? I said, I'll do my best. Took it up to my superiors, and they said, not our problem. Like, our job is to get the food to the people. What happens from there, that's up to them. So, like, shut up, go back to your post, and just deal with it. So that was kind of like strike one, where I was like, this doesn't really sit well with me, but I don't really have a choice. Being on guard in this little like makeshift base that we set up, we weren't allowed to talk to the locals. Like, they had nothing to do. They would come up to the gate wanting to talk to us. And I felt bad for them. Like we were in their country, and yet I had to kind of portray this like non-thinking, non-feeling kind of drone that was supposed to sit by and not show my humanity towards a human being that was suffering. There was this little boy named Johnson, 12 years old. I'll never forget this kid. He came up to the gate one day, struck up a conversation with me. He wanted to get a job somehow working in the base just so he could get some food. When the earthquake hit, he was in his house with his mom, his dad, and his sister. All three of them were killed, like in this one instant. And he had nothing. He had a little backpack with an English phrase book in it. And he would just sit by the fence like all day, just waiting for me to come out there. I wasn't supposed to feed him, but I would sneak him some food every once in a while. And I remember at one point, a bunch of boys were kind of coming up and picking on him and trying to take his stuff from him. And I stuck up for him. I pointed my weapon at these guys. It wasn't loaded or anything like that, but I pointed at him. I said, "Get away from him! Like, just leave, walk away right now." And they did. And he was my good friend after that. So that was kind of one thing that really, really opened me up to like what was going on in this country. Another good incident. First day I was there, guy comes up with his daughter. She's probably 3 or 4 years old. This guy hadn't eaten in weeks, I would assume. He was trying to give us his daughter in exchange for food for himself. And I can't imagine what would make a father, like having my own kid, I can't imagine being in a point where I'm so hungry, I have nothing, that I would literally want to give my son to a stranger in exchange for food, to not really care what would happen to that person, you know? Super, super difficult time. I would say the last really, really big thing that like solidified my decision to get out, Super Bowl Sunday hit. They bring in these giant, massive trailers, okay? And on these trailers are giant boxes of chips, like, you know, potato chips, corn chips, you know, Cheetos, all these different things. They pull out this giant screen. They play the Super Bowl on this screen for the members of the base, and they handed out these chips like it was, you know, like a never-ending supply of them. And I remember this feeling of like sitting there watching everybody eat these chips and being like, man, like we're in a country right now of starving people, and here we are gorging ourselves on chips, watching the Super Bowl as if these people don't matter, you know, all for the sake of boosting morale for us. But my whole thought process was like, screw our morale. You know, we're in this right now to help them, and this isn't serving them at all right now. So that solidified my decision to leave, I would say officially. I still had about 2 years left, but yeah, that was it.
So you told me a little bit about what happened from there, and if you're comfortable with getting into that aspect of things went pretty dark for you from that point.
Yeah, very dark. So getting back from Haiti, I had kind of an accumulation, I would say, of like all the stress, all the biting my tongue, gritting my teeth, you know, tensing up, different reactions to the medications, vaccines, and stuff they were given. And I developed a really, really severe case of chronic fatigue. And I know, like, when I say like chronic fatigue, that sounds so kind of like airy-fairy, but if you were to imagine going to bed tonight, getting 3 hours of sleep, waking up feeling horrible, and then doing this every day for a year, like how that would feel, like that's how I felt. I was so exhausted that I would sleep for 12 to 16 hours a day. I would go into work, I would find open rooms, I'd go in there, I'd lay down, go to sleep, wake up, feel good for 10 minutes, and then feel crushed again. I'd fall asleep at the wheel driving home. Just nothing that I could seem to do would make anything better. So I reached out for help. You know, I went to medical. At the same time, I had fractures all along my shins, like 3 or 4 in this leg, 3 or 4 in this leg. So I couldn't walk, I couldn't do like PT, physical training, any of that stuff. So already at this point, like I'm struggling with this chronic fatigue, these injuries now. I had a hernia that I hadn't addressed before. My unit basically turned their backs on me because it was in the workup for a deployment to Afghanistan. And at this point, when I started seeking help, they took me off the roster to go to Afghanistan with them. And it was at this point that I became, or went from being like the superstar of my company to being like the black sheep. You know, my friends, my leaders, everybody that I know just kind of like just whitewashed me and took me out of the fray. And so things went very, very dark. Doctors wouldn't listen to me. They were saying, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. Just take this antidepressant and shut up, go back to work. Tried it, didn't work. I felt like I was living in some type of like weird reality where life was happening through this little window far away from me, but I was kind of watching from the outside. And just no matter who I went to talk to, nobody seemed to want to figure out what was wrong with me. They all thought they knew what was wrong with me and were, you know, really interested in getting me to just do this or take this in hopes that it would make me better, and it didn't. And so I reached this point, I would say, where I became severely suicidal. Like, I just remember not being able to function anymore as a person. I couldn't do the things that I love. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't do anything. All I could do was sleep. And so I had guns in my house. You know, I was a Marine. I had a pistol. I had a assault rifle, all stuff for self-protection if I needed to. But I remember this one night. This is probably the darkest night that I had had in my life at this point. It was a Saturday. All my buddies had gotten up. They were going out to drink. They had left me alone. Like, they were like, Daryl was just not going to be a part of this anymore, so we're not even going to bother asking if he wants to come out and hang with us anymore. And so I'm sitting there by myself in my room, and I'm just like, you know what? I cannot live like this anymore. Like, another day, it would seem like like just hell, like hell for me, you know? So I got my pistol on my bed, and I'm thinking about, okay, what's the angle that I need to point this thing at to make sure that if I pull the trigger, I'm not gonna leave myself like in a coma or in a hospital bed, stuck in my body, not able to move for the rest of my life. And as I'm trying to figure all this stuff out, I just say, you know what, let me stop for a second. I put my gun down on the bed, I closed my eyes, I took a couple of deep breaths, and I just found myself kneeling on my floor, like in front of my bed. And I just started praying. Like, I prayed for the first time since I was a kid. My family grew up taking us to church, but I really wasn't like a religious person, I would say. I had given up any kind of belief in like a higher power or God, but at this point I was like, I got nothing else to fall back on, like nothing else that I can think of to help me out. And so I just sat on my knees and I prayed. I folded my hands, I looked up to the ceiling, and I said, if there is anybody or anything out there, like, I need you to show me that you're here and that you're with me, because I cannot do this anymore. And I just sat there. And I would say after a few minutes, I just kind of had this settling sense of peace come over me. Really, really indescribable sense of peace come over me. And all that I could think was, okay, just wait a little bit more. Just wait a couple more days. If you can do that, maybe things will get better. I said, okay. Went about my life. Sunday happened, slept most of the day. Got up Monday, went to work, horrible day, like absolutely miserable day. As I'm leaving work, I decided to stop in a pet store to get some food for my lizard that I had at the time. I walk in this pet store. I had a little lizard, yeah. Name is Max, beautiful, beautiful lizard. I walk in this pet store and the back door is open. All of a sudden I see this little black mass dart across in the back room. And I stopped, and this thing comes back and it skids to a stop and looks at me, and it's a little puppy. And I'm looking at this thing, and I bow down like this to get a closer look, and this thing just runs over to me and jumps on me. And he gave me so much love in this moment. And the owner says, "Oh, that's Chrissy, like she's our newest addition." And I don't even know why I said, but I said, "I want her." I said, "I want her." And so she's like, "Well, she's up for adoption." And so I adopted that dog right then. And that became the tether, I guess, that kept me here. It was having this new thing that now depended on me, that showed me unconditional love, like no matter what my mood was. And so, yeah, that's ultimately what kept me here, is my dog, Chrissy.
Amazing. That last segment that you just watched, that was a pretty hard thing for me to actually talk through on camera. I don't know if you felt anything even remotely close to what I felt, just kind of bringing those memories and emotions up. But it was pretty hard, so we took a little bit of a break. Gave me an opportunity to kind of reset myself and some of the people in the crowd as well as Dave. So if you felt anything even remotely close to what I felt, or any of the members in the audience, just take a couple of deep breaths, just relax into it, sigh it out, let it out however you need to. Take a few more deep breaths, even slower the next time if you can, making sure you fill up your belly, and then let it go. Let's get back to the interview.
All right, we're back, and I don't know how we kind of jump back into that exact conversation. I actually want to keep us moving forward. I think that that told us a lot about, your desire to absorb the knowledge that you have to get to where you are today. And so let's take that step. This was around the time when you decided to make a move to Canada, and you started your career. And I mean, you had kind of a coaching career in the sense that you were leading others, and you kind of took a lateral step, I'd say, into coaching the public. So your trip to Canada, what made you move to Canada?
This is the number one question that I get asked, I would say, by like 90% of the people that I meet up here. So I was sent up to Canada in 2000 and I guess it was 10. The first time that the Americans were up here for the tattoo convention. First day out, me and my buddies went to, of all places, the Dome. The Dome, that is where we ended up. And I happened to meet a woman that day, actually, that I kind of got swooped up by. It's funny because when I got off the boat in Canada, I had this feeling. I was like, I'm gonna end up living here. I didn't even know how that was gonna happen.
Had you ever been to
No,
Nova Scotia?
I thought Nova Scotia was in Europe. So when they first told us, I'm like, I'm going back to Europe. Like, this is amazing. And they're like, no, you're going to Canada. And I was like, oh. All right, cool. Like, I'll go. I guess we're going to Canada. All right. So yeah, I met her on the first day. I got sent back home. We dated basically long distance for 9 months. I had proposed to her after 3 months. So I'd only really seen her twice, I would say, like, for a week at a time. Looking back now, like, it seems like kind of a dumb thing, but I'm so glad that everything happened the way it is. So eventually ended up getting out of the Marine Corps. They let me out early, which is actually a really amazing thing. I moved up here, came right through the border. I found myself for the first time without a job, married to her, but she also had 2 kids, like that were quite old. Her son at the time was 6. Her daughter was, I think, 16. She was 9 years older than me. And I just found myself going through this process of, like, the old Daryl was dying. And so because I had spent my whole life up to that point, I mean, we're talking, 26 years being told what to do, like how to think, how to speak, everything. For the first time, when I found myself with nothing to do, I realized that I had no idea who I was. Literally had no idea who I was. And so I went through this process of, like, the dark night of the soul, where I was just kind of reevaluating my past, all my beliefs, all of my thoughts that I had. And I literally felt like my personality had fractured. And so I'm just having to piece together, like, myself basically from scratch. This caused that whole marriage to basically disintegrate. And so I moved out on my own, and that's when I basically started just kind of devoting myself to pursuing the things that I felt called to do. And one of them was fitness. I'd always really been into it since I was 16, but I really decided to just devote myself to just trying to figure out how my body worked. And so that's, I guess, what led me up to this point.
I, for one, am extremely grateful you did. I mean, my experiences through meditation were something that I struggle a lot with that you've helped me with over the last number of years. And I don't know if many people can replicate the experiences that you've had through your life thus far. And I think that that's opened up your ability to certainly actually, you described this really well to me the other day, saying that every book that you read is like taking crumbs. Can you just how do you explain that? Yeah. And like how it's created the base level and like the knowledge that you use and you share today to our members and those around us?
So when I went through my process of kind of rediscovering who I was, I found myself reading every single book that I get my hands on. And we're talking about things from like ancient mythology of different cultures to like ancient religions to reading science and social work. And, you know, I was in college at the time, got my degree in health and wellness. I was reading comics and sci-fi, and I was noticing that every book that I would open, like I would walk into a library, you know, scan, pick a random book, flip open, I would find some phrase or something that would make something kind of click in my mind. And I felt like the whole time, like I was supposed to be learning something, but I didn't quite know what that was. Like I didn't really know about meditation yet at this point. There were certain things that I had done as a kid, certainly, that I remember doing that I've relearned basically, you know, since then. But I was just picking up little tidbits from here and there, and every little kind of interaction I have with a person, or you know, I have some type of like synchronicity where something that I was thinking about would suddenly kind of manifest in life. I would just take note of all that stuff. And basically, you know, kind of like if I had a broom right now and I were to sweep this floor, you know, you might not see a lot of dust, but if you sweep long enough, you'll have a massive pile that shows you just how dirty the floor was. That's kind of what I was doing with the stuff that I was learning, but it wasn't dirt per se, you know, and I just gathered it all up. And once I had a clear, more or less picture, then I just started to see, okay, well, if this makes sense to me, maybe there's some kind of way, or maybe there's some way that I can teach this to somebody else. And so that's what I started doing, is I started teaching people slowly over time things that I had picked up, and I would notice that through the act of teaching somebody something, I would learn about something more myself. And that's I would say what made me really, really grow more than anything else was, you know, having to explain something or the same thing in different ways depending on the person that I was talking to, trying to figure out how to explain it so that they would get it. And in the act of either typing it out or saying it to them, it would make something else click in my mind. Or they would say like, oh, when you told me to do this, I did this, and then I felt this, and I'd say, oh, that's right, like that does tend to happen. And so as a teacher, I became a student, and my students became my teachers. And so there's kind of like this reciprocal thing going back and forth between us. And yeah, I truly believe now that to teach is to learn, and to learn is to teach.
Amazing. I mean, you've started writing for The Pursuit. So in issue 2, you wrote an article on Kaizen, and I mean, you do a lot of remote coaching with members and even non-members from Blended.
One of them's here right now. Shout out Eileen.
Yeah, and a lot of that is around mindset. So your ability to teach people to control their mindset, control their bodies in ways that I've never seen coaches have that kind of knack of doing. How did you, like, is that coming from a book? Is that partly due to your training with the Marines? Where did this kind of evolve from? Or is it just an evolution of you as a whole?
It's both. We're gonna have to get weird for this to make sense, okay?
Perfect.
So, I've always felt like there has been something inside me, inside every single person that doesn't get talked about. Ever since I was a kid, I felt like there was something like not quite right about the world, and I felt like there was something really, really important, but I didn't know what that was. And so, like, after a while, I really started realizing that the thing that I felt like I was missing was myself. It was my attention. And I had spent so much of my time kind of casting my attention outwards, like drowning myself with alcohol or numbing myself, or just endless amounts of like video games and TV and everything where my attention was focused outwards. I realized that when that sleep disorder hit me, that it was something that was calling me back into myself. And so like in that sense, that chronic fatigue was the best gift I think I could have ever been gotten, because it forced me to have to slow down and redirect my attention inward and say, okay, what's wrong with me? Like if nobody can seem to tell me what's wrong with me, I have to be the one to figure this out. And the only way I could think to do it was to pay more attention to what was happening in my body. And so as I started doing this, I would start feeling different things. Like I would start noticing, the movement of my nervous system and we always talk about like ATP and energy in the body, but like people say that kind of as like a loose kind of airy-fairy thing, not realizing that there is literally electricity that flows through your body. And so what I started kind of realizing slowly over time is that if you learn how to quiet your mind, you can tap into this electricity, bioelectricity, chi, prana, spirit, life force, whatever you want to call it. You can use your mind to help direct that different parts of your body. And you can essentially use that to help you get through life. You can use it to make you stronger. You can use it to make you faster. You can use it to help you think better, but you have to have the ability to kind of calm down your mind, not even calm down your mind, I would say, to notice what's going on in your mind and to get everything to be quiet to a point where you can actually feel this and bring it forth. That force that animates my body right now, like it's something that you call forth from within you. And so in that sense, I'm kind of going off on a tangent right now. In that sense, when I learned how to feel that within myself, I started being able to see it in other people. And so now, like if I'm in a class and there's 20 people moving, I oftentimes won't look directly at people. I'll look off to the side and I'll watch them move kind of out of my peripheral vision. And in my mind, there's like an empty silhouette that's painted over each person's body. And so let's say somebody's doing a bent over row. I'll look at them, and in my mind, I'll see a light, kind of a light superimposed on their body that will show me where they're active, where they're not active, what needs to be turned on, what adjustment they need to be made. And so I'll go over and say, hey, like rotate that way, like tuck your pelvis this way, tense right here, squeeze right there, do this, do that, do that. And they go, oh my God, it's so much harder. And I say, well, yeah, like you want to get stronger. So the only way that you can get stronger is with hard muscles. Like, weak muscles don't move weights, they don't move your body. And so my ability to kind of see these holes and leaks in people allows me to kind of fine tune something so that I can give somebody what they need, I guess, to get them a little bit closer to where they want to go.
So as we wrap this up, because I would love to talk, actually we might have to bring you back for another episode, because I could have an entire episode on like the things that I've, more questions. I have so many more questions for myself, so I can't even imagine what members and everyone watching have for questions. But I think the number one thing that I have learned from you is the fact that through my own personal practice through meditation is how long the process takes and it's different for everyone. So like for you, that process still hasn't ended. And you've talked to me about that all the time, of how it continues to evolve. If there was a tip that you could share for viewers that are watching with their personal journeys, if they've started their journey of meditating and like taking control of their mind, or they want to, do you have one single tip that you could share or piece of advice?
Stop looking to the outside world to answer your problems for you. I know that sounds really kind of cryptic, but I feel like everybody wants somebody to tell them what's wrong with them or what they need to do. If you pay attention to your body, it will tell you what you need to do. And that's the one thing that I've learned. But the hardest thing about meditation is getting to the point where you can, be able to know or feel or understand what your body's telling you, and then to decipher what's going on, and to realize that your body doesn't communicate to you via words, like in the way that we think, or even pictures. It's through sensation. Like if you have a pain, that's a very distinct sensation that will tell you if you're doing something that's right or if you're doing something that's wrong. And so the act of paying more attention to it, it lets you over time figure out exactly what is this sensation mean, and to really see how it ebbs and flows based on what you're doing. And obviously if something gets more intense or more painful, you're probably doing something wrong. If it gets a little bit better, you're doing something right. And so it's more of an act of like slowly becoming more and more sensitive to whatever's going on in your body, so that you can actually make use of that and heal yourself from the inside out. And in turn, you know, have a better body, so that you can go out into the world, be a better person, and then share that light with other people.
I love that piece of advice. It's fantastic. Daryl, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Folks, episode 3 of Blended TV with the man of mystery, Daryl Council. Good job.